Barrett, I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Good day, man. We're just we're talking college football. This is supposed to be the off season, but it's really not.
There's really no off season, Ryan. Off season's a mentality that I feel like you're too good for off season.
I agree. So we're talking playoffs and expanded the playoffs. You've played the game. Should we expand playoffs?
I've yet to see one season where there has been a legitimate argument for expanding playoffs. I mean, every year you look at the games that would be played in a hypothetical playoff, and I mean maybe there's some competitive games, but I still just think most years there's somewhere between 2 and 4 teams that can really actually win the thing. So I don't think you should. Do I think eventually they will expand? I do, because there's money involved, and when there's money involved, they usually find a way to get as much money as they can. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that that's reality. And so I think that it probably will happen. I don't think it needs to happen, not unless college football changes dramatically. I mean, I still think this year, I've said this all along, there's really only, in my mind, 3 teams that can actually win this thing. I know anything can happen in a one-game setting. I get all that. But I like the idea of 4. I think it's made the game great. I think it still values the regular season at a really high level. And first of all, if we ever went to 8, since we're going on this road, the idea to me of having conference champions in, I think is a terrible idea. I mean, can you imagine if you had an 8-5 team that won their conference, so they deserve to be in the playoff? I mean, nobody wants to watch that. I mean, what if Virginia somehow upsets Clemson? They deserve to be in the playoff? I mean, I don't like the idea of having conference champions in either. I wish it was just the best 8. Again, do I think that will happen? Probably not, because I know there are a lot more important forces than just what I want. But that's my opinion on it.
Wow. You and I think so much alike in this, because I was just saying the same exact thing, that I don't think conference tie-ins automatically should be in part of this, because, it should be a value if you win the SEC, but you got to have more than just a conference championship to make an argument that you deserve to be in college football playoffs.
I totally agree. And look, my heart is an Alabama guy through and through. But even if you look at this year, I mean, do I think Alabama deserves to be ranked 12? No. I mean, I think that's kind of laughable, to be honest with you. But I also don't really get worked up about it. I've heard a lot of fans that get worked up about it. The fact that Alabama is 12 or 13 or whatever they are, I don't really care that much, because if you're not talking about playoff, it doesn't matter to me whether you're 5 or 13. It's not that important. But I will say, I really don't think, even as much as we love the Tide, if we're honest with ourselves, I think those other 3 teams are better this season, especially after Tua, got hurt. So I think that this is a perfect case for why you don't need expansion in a season like this, where, in my mind, there are 3 teams that have risen above the cream that have risen to the top of the coffee, if you will.
What's the importance of playing in a Citrus Bowl against Michigan from a player perspective? As you look at this game, we're looking for value, looking for why this game is important. Why would it be important to a player?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think it's probably a more fun game than, if you were like, we're to play in the Sugar Bowl and maybe even play against Baylor. Like, I probably would rather play this game, honestly, even though the Sugar Bowl I know is a New Year's Six game, which, honestly means nothing if you really think about it. To me, this is a more fun opponent. You're playing against a name brand team. Jim Harbaugh, that adds some appeal. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself why you play the game. Why do you play the game? Is it you just play to win national championships? And if that's the answer, which maybe it is for some of these guys in these elite programs, then, maybe there's not a reason. But in my mind, that's not why I played the game. It was not just to win national championships. Now, certainly those are my goals, but I played for the guys next to me. I played, for the hard work they put in. I played for my coaches in some ways. I played just because for myself and my family. I played for the Lord and to honor him and what I did, but also just that was my reputation of who I was as a man, that every time I went out there, I was going to play well. So, I think there's more in life than just national championships, believe it or not, even though that's what we prefer every season. And this game has meaning just because it's another game that you're playing.
Barrett, we had a really good analyst on earlier from Jackson, Mississippi. Bo Bounds is a guy that loves to talk college football. He does a college football show there, and we were talking a lot about what Alabama's been able to accomplish since 2009. And he said, I don't think the dynasty is going to stop. He said, but I don't think Alabama can win at the pace they won at in the current college football because it's designed to go against everything. Parity in college football is real, and this has been a wake-up season for me as I look around college football and I see the different teams that were fighting for a spot in the final month. Parity is here. It's here more than it's ever been, and just from my eyes in college football. Where do you see it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think parity from the standpoint of it's not just Alabama and Clemson, but I think anyone, who knows the sport and knows how cyclical it is, that didn't really expect that to be the case. I don't think we're ever going to see parity where, we're going to have some, maybe, I don't want to name any names, but teams that are maybe outside of the traditional powers that are going to rise up and all of a sudden become behemoths. And maybe Clemson's kind of an example. You could say that. They're not really a traditional power, and they've risen up. But generally, I mean, when you're talking about Ohio State and LSU and Clemson that are the dominant teams this year, I don't really think that's surprising in the landscape of college football. So if you're speaking of parity, just that there's other people competing for the championship other than Alabama and Clemson, then yes, that's true. But also, I don't really think that, if we're honest with ourselves, there's more than 7 or 8 schools every season who can win the national championship. I mean, that's maybe that's wrong, but I think, and I don't have any stats on this. I'd have to go back and look, the last time that's really happened. But generally, I think that talent-wise, we have a pretty good idea of who's going to be in the hunt. Now, certainly some teams outperform and some teams underperform. And some teams, during the year we see have a great stretch. Like, for example, Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota had a great stretch this year, but ultimately I think down the stretch we're not title contenders right there at the end. And so, yes and no is my answer to that question, Ryan, is that we have more parity than we've had in years past where it's just been 2 teams. But I still think that it's still a pretty intact power structure of kind of who the elite teams are and who the elite programs are in any given, 3 or 4 year span.
Barrett, when you look at college football from your perspective, and I've asked you this question, but I think it's been about a year since I've asked you this question. You played the game at a high level. You were a 2-time All-American here at the University of Alabama. You went on to play in the NFL. You've had a chance to represent a lot of different recognition. You were at the Outland Trophy last week and presenting that in ESPNU, and you're part of the game from a media perspective now. You know the game from a lot of different angles. I'm curious if I gave you permission to change one thing about college football, something that you would change to improve the overall health of college football. What would you change?
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to my mind, I don't think it would necessarily improve the health. It'd be a personal thing for me. I wish there were some kind of judgment call that went along with targeting penalties. That's what where you could have one that was egregious and, some that are just totally kind of coincidental that are not ejected from the game. I hate to see college players who only have, 12 or so opportunities in a given season to play football be ejected from a half of a game and then, the next half. That, to me, I still just frustrates me. I get the reason why. I don't like it. I think some penalties absolutely deserve that, but others where, the guy has already made his dive and the receiver just happens to roll on the ground and they make head-to-head contact. I don't know. And I don't really have a great solution because, again, it's just kind of honestly, it's kind of one of those things when you see it, like an egregious hit versus one that's just kind of coincidental. So I don't like that. Other than that, I mean, it's hard for me to there are a lot of things I could say. I mean, I do think that the image and likeness thing is a no-brainer. I'm not really the guy that's going to stand on the table and say we have to get this done and that college football is stealing from. I've never complained about my time. I love playing in Alabama. I do think it makes a lot of sense that if you're wearing a jersey that's the number 22 jersey that Mark Ingram clearly it was for him during my time there. That somehow he should be compensated for that. I don't know what that looks like and how it's going to work. So I think that's a good change. But that's a tough question, Ryan. It's kind of question you got to give me in advance. You can't just spring that on me where you're asking me a fundamental change in college football. But that's maybe 2 that come to my head initially.
Well, I mean, we discussed this a lot of times in the off season, but college football is so fresh on our mind right now, and I like that answer because Barrett, I have this sinking feeling when I'm watching college football and I see a targeting call. And I see a young man that, like you said, I mean, it was just the speed of the game. I mean, these guys are so fast, and it's, just one simple movement, and I see a guy that's getting kicked out of the game, and I see him, I don't know if it's a trainer or just a personnel guy, and he walks him to the locker room, and I'm looking at it going, is that really where I want college football? I agree with you. I have that feeling.
Well, and one of my least favorite things, Ryan, sorry to interrupt you, but like, all the people out there that want to say you got to, see what you hit, heads up. Like, this is an unpopular reality, but like when you actually look at the amount of tackles that are made with your head up, like that's just not a realistic way to tackle someone. Like you can't, if you go and a 220-pound running back in the hole and you put your head up and you try to just let him meet you with your chest, I'm going to just go ahead and guess how that's going to go for you. It's not going to go very well. Okay. I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's just the reality is that to tackle someone, like, you have to have some forward lean in your body. Now, I'm not saying you spear someone. I'm not saying that. Your head ideally should be to the side of the guy you're tackling, not head on, and certainly not making helmet-to-helmet contact. But the whole, when people say, oh, you got to see what you hit, got to keep your head up, like, that's a whole other thing. And certainly we need to encourage good technique, and there's a way to have good technique while still, using your head to tackle properly, if that makes sense. And this is kind of technical, but it's just one thing that always frustrates me because, like, if people, the way they demonstrate it, if you actually tackle someone like with your head without leaning forward at all, and your head leaning forward, like you're gonna get trucked in the hole. So that's just the reality of how football is played.
Who's going to win the national title?
That's a tough one, Ryan. It really is. I've struggled over a lot. I've watched tape, and I think that I've said this a lot, and I've said it already in the segment. There's three great teams. It's, to me, really a coin flip between those three. I really think any of them can win it. I don't think Oklahoma will beat LSU, and obviously anything can happen in one game setting. That would really surprise me just based on what I've seen. If you're going to make me pick right now, I'm going to pick LSU because just mathematically they have a much better chance in my mind to be in that title game, whereas the other two, actually the game I'm calling, the Fiesta, to me that's just a coin flip game. So it's hard for me to even pick who's going to win the national championship because I don't even really know who's going to get out of that game alive. So mathematically I'm taking LSU. Because I think either one of those teams will have a good opportunity. And if you're going to force me to pick the Fiesta, I'm going to pick Clemson. I think Clemson has a slight edge over Ohio State right now just because of the way Trevor Lawrence is playing and that offense is playing. So who knows? I think it's going to be the best playoff we've ever had as far as the ability of all three of those teams to win it. I think the Fiesta Bowl is going to be fantastic. I think the national championship will be awesome. So I can't wait to watch it.
Barrett, what all responsibility do you have there in this postseason?
I've got the New Orleans Bowl coming up, which is UAB and Appalachian State.
Good game.
Weekend, this Saturday. And then I have the Fiesta Bowl, which is Ohio State, Clemson. Then I have the Orange Bowl, which is Florida, Virginia. And then I have the Sugar Bowl, which is Baylor, Georgia.
I want to walk you back to 2007, November the 6th of 2007. This guy from Tennessee by the name of Barrett Jones, one of the top players in that state, commits to the University of Alabama. You made that public on December the 6th of 2007. When did Nick Saban know that Barrett Jones was coming? How did you tell him?
December the 6th? You looked that up? That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I
one
did.
One day before Pearl Harbor Day. That's why I picked it. I'm kidding. That's totally coincidental.
Well, it was a couple of days after the LSU game. So I guess, did you come to Tuscaloosa that weekend?
I did. That was a tremendous game. We almost beat LSU. That was fun.
Did, yeah.
What'd you say? When did I let Nick Saban know?
No, I mean, when did you let Nick Saban know? Because a lot of times people make it public. Like today, we're sitting here on the eve of National Signing Day, and there's a lot of players that let Nick Saban know, but they'll publicly make their decision public tomorrow. I'm just curious, when did you let Nick Saban know?
I let him know before I sent out that memo. In fact, this is a very applicable story to our opponent here, Jim Harbaugh. And I say this in jest, kind of. But what I did was I called every coach that I was, of my top five. And obviously I called Coach Saban first and told him I was coming. And then I called the other four guys. And then I told them I wasn't coming just because I didn't want them to be surprised when they saw, my release deal. And by the way, the way I did it, I just basically drafted a statement, sent it out to several publications, and had them all released at the same time because I didn't want to make a big thing about it. Everyone was really nice to me, other than one guy, Jim Harbaugh. He was really mad at me. He told me I was making a big mistake going to Alabama, and because at the time he was at Stanford, he was recruiting me, and they were my top five, and he really gave me a hard time about going to Alabama over Stanford. So I've always remembered that, and I always give him a hard time about it every time I see him.
So did you just send him the pictures of the rings? I mean, is that at some
Yeah,
point?
well, he had this whole 40-year decision thing, whatever. But I think it's worked out okay so far.
No, I think it's worked out great. I'm just curious, what was Nick Saban's reaction? Because you see it on television version of clapping and going crazy. I mean, what does Nick Saban say when a big player like yourself commits to a place like Alabama? What does he say to you?
Honestly, Ryan, I'm just trying to think back to the conversation. I really don't remember it that well. I think I just told him I was coming, and I mean, he was busy. He's always busy, but he just said, "Yeah, we're excited to have you." And I don't know. I mean, I could make something up, but I really don't remember. It wasn't a dramatic. I mean, it's Nick Saban. He's not going to be doing backflips. He's not he's not going to be pulling out an oar and telling you, shipping it to you and telling you it's time to row the boat. He's not really a prop guy. He's just he's straightforward. But he was excited, and I was excited, and we were just pumped about the future.
Now, were you one of those guys that would call other recruits and say, hey, listen, join me? I mean, were you one of those guys, or no, you just said, hey, let those guys make their own decisions? Because, I mean, that 2008 was a very special class.
I'm a great salesman, Ryan. I wanted to get committed early so I could make sure that we got some other guys on board, and, we ended up having a great class. So you can infer what you will from that.
Okay, so Barrett Jones might have called Julio Jones, Mark. I mean, yeah, okay. I'll make it up. I'm a good media guy. All right.
Very good.
All right, Barrett. Man, this will be our final talk before Christmas. Man, I always throw it back to you, and you have a chance to promote our faith in Christ, and you share a little inspiration as we travel throughout the week.
Sure. Matthew 1:21, it says, "And he shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, and he shall save his people from their sins." Look, this is every year in the segment, I try to say this, half for myself and half for the listeners, just that Christmas is a crazy time. It's very busy. It's very commercialized. There's a lot going on. I think everyone's running around with their head cut off, going to Christmas parties and Christmas cards, and there's just so much involved with it now, both financially, which I'm learning now as a real adult. Buying Christmas gifts and stuff. It's fun to give them, but they're expensive. And there's just a lot that goes on with Christmas. But I think it's very important that somehow we find a way to set our minds on what really the true meaning of it is. And it's the time of the year where we really set our minds on the fact that God sent his son down to the earth, and he was born as a human. It's pretty crazy if you think about it. It's pretty wild even to say it. But it's the time where we celebrate that. And so take a moment, however it is, with your family, and, set your mind on that. And, I think we've tried this whole kind of Advent season to keep our minds on that. My wife and I, as we're getting ready to welcome our first child, and then obviously Christmas Eve service is always a special time with our family, because we want to make sure that that's really our priority, and that's what really is important to us, is the fact that we're going to spend time together, and we're getting to reflect on the fact that Jesus came and to the earth and died for our sins. So it's an important time of year. It's a fun time of year. It's a great time to be with family, but let's not let it get over-commercialized in our minds, and let's remember the true purpose of why we celebrate it.
Barrett, it was my fault because we didn't connect last week. You said you were going to give us the gender announcement after you told your parents. I have not. I guess I could go quickly to Instagram or Twitter and see if I could find out. But
it's a boy, Ryan. It's a boy. So
we got a future offensive lineman. So I was right. I told you that I mean, that was my prediction. So, okay. Oh, I see it now. I see it. Okay. By the way, it's a boy. Okay.
Yep. I was kind of subtle. I'm a subtle guy.
Okay. I'm all behind that. I mean, offensive lineman's good. And
no, he's gonna be a golfer, Ryan. Don't even try.
Golf's good too. Plenty of money there.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. All right.
I'll let him decide. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Barrett. Have an awesome week, man. Safe travels. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Barrett.